on notice, and I'd like to thank everyone who's submitted a question. These are going to appear on the screen. The first one, as you'll read, the term convocation has been under discussion for some time, mainly because it doesn't resonate with younger, newer members. A suggested approach to improving matters and without having to make changes to the UWA Act is to add a descriptor to the term that will help clarify the meaning further. In other words, the suggestion is to create a trade name, i.e. convocation / UWA graduates and alumni. How do you propose to canvass the views of the wider membership of convocation? And that's from Angela, thank you. Well, I think in the last week, we've all been made aware of the power of history, heritage, and tradition. We've just got to turn on our television at any second, really. And that's often something that's forgotten as we tend to lurch from one big thing to the next big thing, pushed along by the power of advertising and the media. And of course, the issue of the name convocation comes up from time to time. And whenever it does, and when council discuss it, there are a wide range of opinions. Some people say, oh, it's obsolete. No one knows what it means. Students wouldn't have a clue what convocation is. But others feel strongly that it has a proud tradition as part of the university's history, and that we should market it better so that students and graduates understand its meaning and purposes. As you say, Angela, in your question, we can't change the name convocation. It's in the UWA Act, which is incredibly complex and difficult to change. But it would be possible to develop a brand or kind of a business name which might clarify its meaning. So in order to answer directly your question, how we're going to work out how to do this, we've decided to try and get some hard evidence, because there's lots of voices saying things, what we should and shouldn't do, but we don't know how extensive the various views are. So we're planning to get some expert advice on statistical sampling and the development of questions to survey you, convocation members. We anticipate that this will probably include using statistically selected samples of members broken into different categories like gender or age groups to gather the views of each group. And we're hoping to develop that survey before the end of the year. So look out for the survey, and it'll be really interesting to see what it reveals to us about the way we describe ourselves and our activities. So I hope that answers the question. Now, question 2, I believe, is for Tim, and I might come over here to be out of the way. I'll read the question out. I've also got it here. Dr. Nicholas Coatsworth was recently presented with the honorary degree of Doctor of Medicine, quoted as being in recognition of his contribution to community health and service in Australia and internationally, and most significantly, his outstanding leadership during the challenging times of COVID. Now, here comes the rub. This so-called leadership during the pandemic has contributed to a message that's cost thousands of lives. Dr. Coatsworth has been quoted saying that COVID is definitely not an airborne pathogen. More recently, in relation to COVID, he stated that it's absolutely time to do away with the rules. And the question from Andrew Stock is, will the bestowal of this doctorate be reviewed?
Thank you, Jenny, and thanks for the question. So I'll just start with outlining how the honorary degrees are decided on. And so honorary degrees are issued by the Senate on the recommendation from an honorary degrees committee, which is a standing committee of Senate. And that's in line with the policy and also the procedures that we have in terms of how we receive nominations and then process and decide on their honorary degrees. So Dr. Nick Coatsworth was nominated for an honorary doctorate in March 2021 by a then member of the Senate and a member of the Convocation Council in the categories of community service and the contribution to the public sector. So the decision was made by the Senate in October 2021, and the award was made at the graduation ceremony in July 2022. And the contribution included his significant work as the Deputy Chief Medical Officer, the COVID-19 response to the Australian Government's Department of Health, but also reflected his extensive academic and professional contributions, including significant service to national and international communities and health service. So honorary awards can be revoked, but that's at the sole discretion of Senate, where the details are provided in support of a nomination for an award and they're subsequently found to be incorrect or incomplete, or if the recipient has been convicted of a serious criminal offence. So just in this particular case, I think it's also important to think about the timing of the commentary. So the commentary in terms of the early stage of the COVID pandemic, in terms of the comments about airborne, and then the commentary in terms of reducing restrictions as we emerged from the pandemic. That's the answer.
Thank you very much. Now you have another question, which will come up in a sec. Yes, at present, it's not possible for members of Convocation who are not staff members of the university to find staff email and phone numbers or the membership and kind of organisation of particular units, departments or schools on the website. And the question from Fran Pesic, council member, is this deliberate or is it just an error that will be rectified?
Thanks. That's also a very interesting question. So it is deliberate. There has been changes in laws about personal information, and that's from the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner. So just backtracking, there was a decision to not have all that personal information, first name, surname, telephone number, email address, work address, job titles, publicly available because it is classified as personal information. And there has been risks, for example, unfortunately in our society, domestic violence, people trying to track down people. So this is why some of this personal information is not publicly available any longer. Staff can opt in to make their information publicly available, but the change has been relatively recent as we have been updating our web pages. So there's still some work for all staff to make those decisions about opting in to have their details publicly available. In terms of the academic staff, there is a publicly available profile and research repository for all academic staff members, and their expertise is searchable by discipline. And the UWA website now does have a expanded Contact Us page with details of the commonly needed areas, but also with an option for people to put in a general inquiry and then get a response back. So you should still be able to hopefully find what you need to know, but it might take a little bit longer, and that's the explanation of why not every staff member is listed any longer on the public-facing website.
Thank you, that's interesting. Thank you very much, Tim. Okay, so that concludes the questions on notice, but we may well have some questions from the floor. I thank you for your contribution very much indeed, Tim, that's terrific. But questions from the floor? Yes. Could you please stand and say your name, noting particularly that people online will need to hear.
Thank you, Warden. Ray Towse is my name. I refer to the Treasurer's report, 31st December 2021, I'm looking at page 2. The Treasurer's report shows that Council is considering transferring general reserve funds to the long-term investment pool. I've got 2 questions in regard to that. One is whether the possibility of transferring to the long-term investment pool, is that pool environmentally and ethically sustainable financial products? And the second question is, does Convocation have an interest in its investments being in overtly ethical and environmentally sustainable products, financial products?
Okay, thank you very much, Ray. I think there are two questions there in a sense. And perhaps first of all, David, as our acting treasurer, would you like to say anything to that?
Yes.
Could you please stand for the camera?
Yes, the Convocation currently has funds in the long-term investment pool. The long-term investment pool is the university's pool, so it invests according to the rules of the university, and Tim might know more about that than I. But it is a long-term, it's a balanced fund, and it operates as a fund of funds. So, in other words, it invests in other fund managers to run the funds. The idea of transferring it and the financial reason for putting the additional funds in is, you'll see, last year I think the short-term pool earned about 1% and the long-term pool earned about 16%. And over time, the long-term pool would earn about 8.5%, 9%. So it's financially it's a more rewarding way to go. You'll also notice that the words may go in because we'll, I think, chose not to put it in the current environment, and given that the long-term pool is probably down a few, if it's like normally balanced fund, will be down about 6 or 7% so far this year. That's probably been a good decision. But in terms of how the investments are chosen, remembering this is a very large pool and we're a tiny, tiny portion of that pool, the ethics behind that pool, perhaps Tim, you could comment.
Tim.
Thank you. So I'm certainly aware that the university is aware of these issues, and there's discussions about that. So we certainly follow, anti-slavery policies, no tobacco investments, but there's still, I think, work to be done, and we'd have to get the experts in, so the CFO or the investment team in to really answer what the current status of that is, because I'm not fully aware of the current situation.
Thank you very much, Tim. Hopefully that responds to your questions sufficiently, Ray. No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, yes, okay. Perhaps we can pass that on to the CFO for some further information.
Yeah.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes, thank you. The microphone's just coming.
Craig Carter. I know the university changed a lot of degrees to make them postgraduate degrees, like engineering and etc. But there's been a reversal of that. Can you just sort of bring us up to date where that's going?
Tim, you'd be best
I'm
placed,
happy.
yeah.
Yes, thank you. So yes, in recent years, so if I take a step back, so we did move to a new course model where we had more general undergraduate degrees and more specialised postgraduate degrees, and engineering in particular moved to be postgraduate. And in recent years, there's been the reintroduction of those named degrees. So you can, again, do a Bachelor of Engineering, but there still is also the postgraduate degree, because there's people that are wanting to make career changes. And also, a number of international students, we're an international university, are interested in the master type qualification. But it's clear for our school leavers and our community where school leavers are focused on their pathway and their timing to a successful career, that those named undergraduate degrees like engineering or agriculture, like I did, that attracts those school leavers into those degrees. And we've had really great success in numbers of school leavers, again, entering, for example, in engineering as the example that you gave. So, yeah, we're just evolving back to what the market signals clearly have been about having those named degrees. So thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Other questions? Yes, please, one here.
Thank you. Mark Duncan-Smith, medical school graduate, UWA, current president of AMA in WA. I am dumbfounded that Nick Coatsworth has been given an honorary doctorate, and I actually consider that devalues my UWA medical degree. He was never the deputy chief medical officer. He was the acting deputy. He was never actually appointed to a permanent position. His opinion has been out of kilter with that of most of the medical profession, and it's been considered as being primarily politically and self-motivated. And my question to you is, who do I write to start a conversation to ensure that that honorary doctorate is properly reviewed?
Thank you.
Tim?
Yes. I think you could write, you can write to me because I'm here tonight, and then I would make sure that it enters into the right pathways. So I would then share that with the Vice-Chancellor, who would then share it with the Chancellor. But since I'm here tonight, I think it'd be good to write to me, and then I can provide the context and deliver that forward. I'll give you my card.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes.
Thank you.
Just wait for the microphone, please. Yep.
My question concerns the state of Harold Taylor's black stump sculpture to the west side of the Octagon, and also the golden, I think it relates to Sean Tan's story, the work that's at the west end of the University Club. It's quite distressing to see the continual deterioration of both pieces of works of art. So what's the university's policy or funds to maintain these at-risk, valuable works of art?
Thank you very much. This is something that indeed Convocation Council and also the UWA Historical Society have also been concerned about. I'm not sure where their inquiries are up to, but Tim, can you add any info?
I can, in a general sense, and I did read the minutes from the last meeting where there was a discussion then about a deficit in maintenance of the infrastructure at the university, so buildings in general. So that's been acknowledged. We have been underinvesting in maintenance on the campus. It's acknowledged, and the Vice-Chancellor, I think, in his previous report, did summarise on the importance of us being able to step up our maintenance budget, and that is in our future plans. We're working hard now with our budgeting for next year and the following year in terms of building maintenance, general maintenance, but I don't have specifics about those artworks, but definitely acknowledge that the university has underinvested in maintenance because of the situation that we have been in, and we are actively looking to rejig how we look after the campus as well as our people, but it does take a bit of time to get into that new situation. But already next year there's plans for more maintenance, and it's something that is actively discussed also by the Senate in terms of general maintenance of the campus.
Yeah, that's great. Oh, Fiona, did you want to add something?
Yeah, hi. I know a bit. I don't know. I know a bit about the eggs because of the material that was used to glue the mosaics onto the eggs. We're actually looking in discussions around what material would be more suitable to to upgrade those eggs and keep them in the state that they were in. And I know that because we actually had some of the, as well as Convocation, there was a number of donors to that piece of artwork. So we had them on campus and we were explaining that to them, and they were satisfied that we were doing something. And also just furthermore on Tim's point and what Jenny said, this has been raised through Convocation Council and through the Historical Society. And we do know that there is some work also being done to some of these planned for some of these other significant artworks. But I don't know much about the other artwork, but I know which one you're talking about as well. Yeah, so just reassuring that we are looking into that, and as Tim said, there has been budget put aside.
Jenny?
That's great to hear. Yeah, David, yep.
Could I just add to that, because I was very concerned about the Howard Taylor as well. There is something actively going on at the moment. It's the second time that's had to be repaired. It was the same issue happened about 2004 or 5. So we've had experts out to have a look at the concrete and the state of the concrete. We've been locating or looking to locate tiles. Last time it was done, there were tiles that was, spare. There's still some spare tiles, but they're not the ones we need. So we're trying to locate, they came from Murano, I think, originally, and so we're trying to find someone that can do that. And then the idea is how, it's the old philosophical thing of, are you restoring something, or do you make it so it doesn't fall apart again? So it is really active, it's very actively being looked at. It's recognised as a problem. Funds will always be the issue in the end, but at the moment we're getting a good handle on how to address the issue. We found located people that can do the tiling in Western Australia. So it's at least the Howard Taylor one is on the way, I think.
Thank you. Other questions?
Oh, hi, thank you. Bronwyn Tyson, and I can't quite remember my graduation. This question arises from the first question that you had before you, the letter. Can I point out that I don't know either of these gentlemen? I don't know the doctor that wrote the letter. I'm curious to know if you received that letter before the July graduation ceremonies. And that is my question.
Which letter was that? The Nick Coatsworth one?
Yeah, I don't even know, I don't know the gentleman, but it seems to me relevant that if a decision was made in 2021 and you had the graduation in July 22, and did you receive the letter inquiring about your whether you should have investigated further? It seems to me relevant when you received this inquiry, when you received the letter.
Sure.
Thank you.
The letter only came very recently. Where's Claire? Claire's disappeared.
So,
yes, Claire.
when the invitation went out for questions on notice, that was the one question, the first question we got in.
Yeah, that was it.
That was August.
When the invitation went out to this meeting in August, then the questions started coming in, and that was the first question that came in. So it was August this year. Just after the graduation? Yeah, just yes. When was he presented with the
July.
July. Yeah, just after. Yeah, you're right. Yep. Other questions? Okay. Well, thank you.
Jenny, we've got a question.
Sorry, another question. Yeah.
Yes, I was just going to ask a question of Tim. When we had the previous presentations by the Vice-Chancellor, some of the hot topics then was the finances of the university, which were grim at that stage. And we also had the sort of 2 task force initiatives which were on their way. I was wondering if you could give us an update on those 2 issues. Yep. That was the study and the learning task force.
Yep, sure, thank you. So the student experience task force that was led by Nin Kirkham, that task force has submitted its report. That report's been considered at academic board and also by the university executive, and it's already been translated into what are the Vice-Chancellor's 2022-23 priorities. So about 6 weeks ago, I think, the Vice-Chancellor released his priority documents for the remainder of this year and next year, and some of the recommendations, not all of them, because there was actually about I can't remember, there was 30 something or more, don't quote me on the number, more than 30 recommendations, but there's a handful of key recommendations from that task force which are now reflected in the priorities from the Vice-Chancellor in terms of student experience, enhancing the student experience. So that's been really successful in terms of a task force and focusing our attention on that student experience. The second task force is led by Ray De Silva Rosa, the Chair of Academic Board, and that task force, as far as I'm aware, has not yet submitted its final report. And so as soon as that is submitted, again, the university will discuss that in those two key groups, that Academic Board, Executive. The other one actually went to Senate as well, so there was discussion there, and so it will be actioned and looked at as soon as it's available. But they've been great initiatives. I'll comment on the finances, and then can I also say something about the tree
Okay.
from the
Thank you.
from the photographs. So yeah, the university certainly has had financial challenges, a structural deficit. Last year's investment income was quite successful. So when you look at our annual report, you know, there's a reported surplus, but it's mainly through the investment income, right? The endowment. So in the actual operations of the university, we still have further work to do. The Vice-Chancellor talked about us restructuring in a way where we would get $70 million savings and $80 million growth. And we're well on that pathway. So we have achieved about $50 million of the saving, and the student numbers, the named degrees, and the increased interest in our courses means there's also been a turnaround in enrolments. But we're very optimistic that that turnaround will continue, both domestically and also in terms of some of the international students returning to UWA and to Western Australia in general. So the state government have also recognised the importance of education as an economic stimulus for Western Australia, as well as making sure that we have the future workforce we need. So they've actually also, and it was in the Vice-Chancellor's report, have an initiative where they're promoting Western Australia as a study destination, because most of the international students clearly go to Sydney, Melbourne, other places. And so we are looking to get those international numbers back up to where they were, because it's very important for the mix of students on campus, and also for our operations, and also for our, I think the university's been a beacon to attract talent to the state as well as develop our own talent, and so we want to make sure that continues. The tree, it was quite interesting. Those photos are just fantastic, and the university archivists pulled them out. They weren't sitting and waiting. That video wasn't sitting and waiting. It was all done very quickly. The archivists went and got all these photos, and that tree created quite a lot of interest. And in fact, when I was asking the university librarian where the tree it's just in front of physics building. And in fact, there was floral tributes put around. It's now a very big, mature tree. And last week, there was a number of floral tributes around that tree. So it's really impressive that that connection is still there, and that people recognised it. And on Twitter, there was a photo with the tree, the photo you showed, and then also the tree with lots of bouquets around it last week. Yeah.
Thank you, that's fascinating. Yes, Pauline.
Thank you very much for that, Pauline Tremlett. I'm wondering whether, in fact, Yes, I'm being nudged because I'm supposed to have stood up. Sorry about that. It's good having the younger generations around to tell us what we're supposed to do. Seriously, what you were just saying about the tree and so forth, it reminds me that yet again, I do not see very much communication going out to the graduates or indeed to the local community about what's going on at the university. Has somebody prepared a photo and report to go into the Post or the West Australian or indeed the Australian about that tree? If not, why not?
Thank you. So certainly the video is all publicly available and there's lots on Twitter.
You didn't hear what I said. I don't even know about Twitter.
Okay.
It's irrelevant. I'm talking about the graduates of this university, not just through some mechanical
Okay.
IT bit.
Fiona, were you going to have a go? Was that it? Yes?
I was just going to give an update of what the university has done. Maybe not to the graduates. The Vice-Chancellor has formally sent the university's condolences, which includes the graduates, to the Governor on behalf of the university and its community. In regards to the graduates, we haven't done anything yet. We worked with our corporate comms area, who produced, as Tim said, the information that was on the website and put out to the public via the website.
Can I also say that as warden, I put a note in the federal government's commemorative, whatever it's called, Prime Minister and Cabinet. But I think it sounds as if you believe this is something that the university should do more on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's essentially what you want.
Absolutely.
Is that possible, Tim? Can we do more? Can we do more? Oh, first of all, Devon.
I was just going to say, it sounded to me as though you were talking more about media publicity of things that the university's doing, whereas I find, on the contrary, that the university at the moment is doing fantastic communication. If you want it in the newspapers, but certainly if you can go on to Facebook, if you go on to any of Twitter, any of the media sites, there's constantly information about what's happening at the university all the time. Great pictures, information, all the time. You could never get that in a newspaper. You might get one little article that most people wouldn't see.
That means you're missing a complete segment
Well,
of the community.
one of the issues that I think most of us have found when we've had to chase publicity for something with a newspaper, you've got to have a hook, you know, for them to grab onto. It's very, very difficult. And we have very limited newspaper media in this town. I mean, we've got the West Australian and the Sunday Times, who are, well, they're largely negative, yes, yeah. And then locally, we've got the Post, which does, you know, provide some information, but only if it relates to this particular area. So it's not easy to get the journalists to pick up our stories. And would that be right, Tim? I'm speaking out of hand here, probably.
So we do a number of press releases every week about things that are happening at the university. We didn't do a press release about the tree, I guess, because, well...
We've only thought of it.
Well, you just thought of it. It's a good idea. And there's been a lot of press interest in that Helen Milroy's been invited to represent Australians at the funeral. So she's a UWA professor, and that's been what most of the media interest has been about in terms of UWA's connection and involvement. Missing an opportunity.
Okay, right. Okay, well, look, thank you, everyone, for your questions. I think we're pretty much done now. I'm sure we could continue on and discuss all sorts of things, but you're welcome to do that over a drink in the foyer. So I'd like to thank Tim. I'd like to thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you. Thanks, Jenny. Thanks, everyone.
And just a few other thank yous to Claire, who's done so much work in getting this all together, to the team from Brightside, who've done a great job for us, and also, well, thanks to Maria Carvello from the archives, because it was she and her team who were responsible for putting together the images, the photos of the Queen at UWA. And for other photographs used tonight, to Manny for his photography. And I think that's all, except to thank all members of Convocation Council. They're doing a great job. And to declare the Spring Ordinary Meeting of Convocation for 2022 closed at, bingo, 8 p.m, let's say.
Good.